Forget the movies. Forget the polished brass buttons, the heroic slow-motion charges, and the swelling orchestral music. If you were an infantryman in 1944, World War II didn't feel like a crusade for freedom. It felt like a slow, damp, agonizing struggle against your own body. It was the smell of wet wool that never dried, the taste of cold, congealed grease, and the constant nagging fear that the hole you dug in the dirt this morning might be the one you stay in forever. Today, we're stepping off the parade ground and into the Foxhole. We're looking at the uncharted reality of the frontline soldier, the gross, the weird, and the terrifying details that your history teachers skipped. From the speed-fueled marches of the Blitzkrieg to the superstitions of the Pacific, this is the 24-hour nightmare of a World War II soldier. Your day didn't start with an alarm clock. It started with the stand to. An hour before dawn, every man was awake, bayonet fixed, staring into the gray mist. Why? Because that's when the enemy loved to visit. But the enemy wasn't your only problem. Let's talk about your feet. In the European theater, trench foot was a silent predator. Imagine your feet being soaked in freezing water for 3 days straight. Your skin turns red, then blue, then begins to rot while you're still wearing your boots. Soldiers were ordered to change their socks daily, but when you're pinned down by an MG-42, taking off your boots feels like an invitation to a funeral. Some units got creative. They'd wrap their feet in dry newspaper or even straw, anything to wick away the moisture. If you didn't, you'd find yourself in a field hospital watching a surgeon reach for a saw. And then there was the noise. We call it post-traumatic stress now. Back then, it was shell shock or battle fatigue. But to the guy in the hole, it was the screaming Meemies. That was the nickname for the German Nebelwerfer rockets. They didn't just explode, they shrieked. It was a psychological weapon designed to snap your nerves before the shrapnel even reached you. You'd press your face into the mud, mouth open, to keep the pressure of the blasts from bursting your eardrums, and wait for the world to stop shaking. An army marches on its stomach, but in World War II, that stomach was usually grumbling. If you were a US GI, you lived out of a box. The K-Ration was your mobile meal. Inside, you'd find a small tin of meat, some crackers so hard they could chip a tooth, and, believe it or not, 4 cigarettes. But not all rations were created equal. Ask any Marine from the Pacific Theater about ham and lima beans. It was universally loathed. It was so oily and foul-smelling that soldiers considered it a jinx. Opening a can was seen as an omen that you weren't making it through the night. Men would literally go hungry rather than touch the stuff. Over on the Axis side, things were faster, much faster. During the invasion of France, German soldiers weren't just motivated by ideology. They were fueled by Pervitin, a brand name methamphetamine. It was marketed as a vignette to keep you alert. In reality, it turned the Wehrmacht into a legion of chemically induced insomniacs. They could march for 22 hours, fight for 4, and do it all again the next day. But the uncharted cost was devastating. After 3 days of no sleep, the hallucinations started. Soldiers would report seeing phantom tanks or hearing voices in the trees. When the drug wore off, they didn't just sleep, they collapsed into a near comatose state. The Blitzkrieg was a high that came with a horrifying come-down. Survival wasn't just about food and ammo, it was about morale. and morale meant mail. But how do you get millions of letters across the Atlantic without sinking a ship under the weight of the paper? Enter V-mail. Your letter to your sweetheart wasn't just mailed, it was photographed. The military would take your letter, shrink it down to a 16mm microfilm reel, fly it over, and print it back out at the destination. One mailbag could hold 150,000 letters this way. But there was a catch: the censor. Every letter was read by an officer. If you mentioned the weather, which could reveal your location, the name of your unit, or even a specific hill, they'd take a literal razor blade and cut that section out of your letter. Your wife back home would receive a piece of paper that looked like Swiss cheese. And what about the downtime? War is 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror. Soldiers became master scroungers. They'd trade chocolate and cigarettes for fresh eggs, wine, or, if they were lucky, a bath in a rusted-out steel drum. This is where the million-dollar wound comes in. It was a dark, unspoken joke. A wound that wasn't fatal, but was good enough to get you a ticket home. A shot through the shoulder? That was a $1 million ticket. It was a grim lottery that everyone wanted to win. While the infantry was in the mud, some soldiers were playing a much weirder game. Have you ever heard of the Ghost Army? This was a unit made up of artists, actors, and sound engineers. Their job wasn't to shoot guns, it was to perform a play. They used inflatable rubber tanks, massive loudspeakers that played the sound of troop movements, and fake radio chatter to trick the Germans into thinking a massive invasion was coming from the wrong direction. Imagine being a soldier whose only weapon is a balloon and a record player, positioned just miles away from a real panzer division. If the wind blew too hard, your tank might fly away. It was one of the most bizarre and successful Uncharted operations of the war.
Arizona,
And we can't forget the Navajo code talkers. While the world's best cryptographers were trying to crack complex machines like Enigma, the US Marines were using a language that had never been written down. The Japanese never cracked it. A soldier's life in the Pacific often depended on a voice over a radio speaking a language that defied every rule of modern linguistics. When the war finally ended in 1945, the soldiers who came home weren't the same men who left. They carried the mud of the Foxhole in their spirits for the rest of their lives. Being a soldier in World War II wasn't about the grand maps in the war rooms of London or Berlin. It was about the next 50 yards. It was about whether your socks were dry, whether your rifle was clean, and whether the guy next to you had your back. History remembers the generals, but the uncharted past belongs to the millions of men who survived the impossible, one tin of mystery meat and one freezing night at a time. If you found this look into the grit of the past fascinating, hit that like button. It helps us keep digging up these stories. And tell me in the comments, if you were stuck in a foxhole in 1944, which of these weird realities do you think would have been the hardest to handle? This is Uncharted Past, your favorite history channel, and thanks for watching.